No one could remember the first night the house, at the end of Graven Row, opened its door. They remembered the after. They remembered how the air on the street began to feel heavier, like breathing through damp cloth. How pets refused to walk past the third lamppost. How sound didn't travel properly anymore, voices fatting too fast, footsteps swallowed whole. They remembered when people stopped parking near the end of the street. And eventually, they remembered when people stopped living there at all. Graven Row hadn't emptied overnight. It thinned slowly, like a wound refusing to close. One house at a time went dark. Families packed up quietly. Some claimed they heard things through the walls at night. Others said nothing at all and left without warning. At the very end of the road stood the house. It leaned slightly to the left, as if exhausted by the effort of remaining upright. Its paint had long ago surrendered to rot, peeling in long strips that curled like dead skin. The windows were boarded, but deep scratches carved through the wood from the inside suggested something had tried, again and again, to escape. The porch sagged in the middle. The front door was always closed during the day. At night, it sometimes stood open. No one ever saw it open. Marcus Cole loved stories like that. Not because he believed them, but because he understood fear as entertainment. Fear meant views. Fear meant attention. Fear meant control, especially when you were the one holding the camera. "This is it," he said, stopping at the mouth of Graven Row and lifting his phone. "You can feel it already. This place is perfect." Lena stood beside him, arms crossed tight against her chest. The street felt colder than the rest of town, despite the late summer heat. Her skin prickled, like she'd stepped into a draft. "I don't like it," she said. "We haven't even gone down the street yet." "That's the point," Marcus replied. "Anticipation." Jonah lingered a few steps behind them. He hadn't wanted to come. Not really. But something about staying away felt worse, like ignoring a sound behind you that you know won't stop until you turn around. The house waited at the end of the road. It looked farther away than it should have. "You still in?" Marcus asked, glancing back at Jonah. Jonah hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." The lie tasted metallic. They started walking. The silence deepened with every step. No insects buzzed. No wind moved through the trees. Even their shoes sounded wrong against the pavement, like the noise was being absorbed before it could echo. The houses on either side of the street were hollow shells now, windows dark, doors chained shut, mailboxes stuffed with years of forgotten paper. Some still had children's toys rotting on the lawns. Jonah felt watched. Not from the houses. From the end of the street. As they approached, the house's details sharpened. The boards over the windows were old, but the scratches through them were fresh, pale wood exposed beneath dark rot. The porch creaked softly in the stillness, even before anyone stepped on it. Marcus climbed the steps first. The wood groaned under his weight. "That's already a great sound," he said, grinning. Lena followed reluctantly, her foot hovering before committing to the step. Jonah came last. The door stood open. No wind had moved it. Marcus raised his phone. "Okay, rolling." They crossed the threshold. The door slammed shut behind them. The sound was violent. Lena screamed. Marcus jumped despite himself, then laughed too loudly. Okay, good timing, house." Jonah didn't laugh. The air inside was warm, not stale, alive, thick with mildew and something sharper beneath it, a smell that reminded Jonah of rusted tools and burnt hair. The hallway stretched ahead, narrow and dim. Their phone flashlights cut through the dark, revealing wallpaper peeling in long strips. Beneath it were older patterns, florals, stripes, childish shapes, layered like decades of forgotten skin. "This place is bigger on the inside," Lena murmured. Jonah nodded. "It shouldn't be this long." The door behind them rattled softly. Jonah turned and grabbed the handle. It didn't move. Marcus tried next, pulling harder until the hinges groaned. Nothing. A faint sound crept through the house. Breathing. Slow, uneven. It didn't come from any direction Jonah could pinpoint. "Tell me you hear that," Lena whispered. Marcus hesitated. "Probably pipes." "There's no plumbing," Jonah said. The breathing continued. They moved forward. The hallway opened suddenly into a living room far larger than the house's exterior should allow. Furniture sat arranged neatly beneath white sheets, untouched by dust. A fireplace dominated one wall, blackened inside, its mantel carved with symbols that made Jonah's eyes ache if he focused too long. His flashlight landed on something near the entrance. Marks, carved into the wood. Tallies. He stepped closer. "Guys," he said quietly. Lena joined him. "Those look deliberate." Some of the marks were shallow. Others were deep enough to splinter the wood. Some grouped neatly in fives. Others scratched wildly over each other. Marcus lifted his camera. "That's creepy, I like it." Jonah noticed something else. A few of the marks were darker. Wet. The breathing stopped. Something shifted above them. "Let's check upstairs," Marcus said, forcing confidence. The staircase protested loudly beneath their feet. Each step echoed back a fraction of a second late, distorted, as if the house was repeating the sound incorrectly. Halfway up, Lena's phone flickered. "No, don't you dare," she muttered. The screen went black. Her flashlight died. The laugh came immediately. Soft. Familiar. It sounded like her. "I didn't," Lena said, her voice shaking. The laugh echoed again, farther down the hallway above. Jonah turned to Marcus. Marcus wasn't there. Jonah's pulse hammered in his ears. "Marcus," he called. No answer. Lena backed away slowly, her dead phone clutched tight. "He's messing with us." The hallway upstairs stretched impossibly long, doors lining both sides. Some were open, some closed. Some looked swollen, warped, as if they'd been forced shut from the inside. The laugh came again. Closer. Lena bolted. Jonah chased her, shouting her name, but the hallway split. 1 second they were together, the next a wall stood between them. He skidded to a stop in front of a closed door. It opened. He stepped inside before he could stop himself. The door shut. The child's bedroom was wrong in a way Jonah couldn't immediately name. It was too small. Too bright. Crayon drawings covered every surface, walls, ceiling, even the floor. Stick figures hung from ropes, their mouths scribbled black, eyes hollow. Some figures were scratched out violently, replaced by new ones. A rocking horse creaked gently in the corner. Back and forth. Back and forth. Jonah tried the door. Locked. The air thickened. The walls didn't move, not visibly, but they leaned. The ceiling felt lower. The room pressed inward, squeezing the space around him. Jonah's breathing grew shallow. The drawings began to change. Lines thickened, faces sharpened. One of the stick figures had his hair. His eyes. Jonah screamed. The walls closed. Jonah's scream didn't bounce. It didn't echo the way it should have inside a small room with low walls and hard corners. The sound left his throat and vanished, swallowed like a candle snuffed between wet fingers. He clawed at the doorknob again, hard enough that the skin at the base of his thumb split and smeared blood across the chipped brass. The knob stayed cold and still. The door stayed shut. Behind him, the rocking horse creaked. Back. Forth. Back. Forth. Jonah turned slowly, forcing himself to look because the alternative, pretending it wasn't there, felt like giving the room permission to do worse. The horse was old wood and cracked paint, one glassy eye missing, its head tilted as if listening. It moved on its own, steady and patient. He backed away from it, bumping into the wall. The crayon drawings were rough under his palms, waxy. Stick figures swung from ropes drawn too thick, their limbs bent at sharp angles that didn't look like childlike exaggeration. They looked like someone had watched real bodies hang and tried to recreate the posture. His phone light trembled across the floor. and he realized the drawings weren't only on the walls. They were under his feet. The floorboards were covered in crayon too, layered scribbles, heavy black lines rubbed into the wood like bruises. The darker patches weren't wax, they were stains. Jonah swallowed and tasted rust. "Marcus," he called again, quieter this time, as if shouting might make the room shrink faster. No answer. The air thickened, warm and damp, like breath inside a mouth. Jonah's shirt stuck to his back. He felt sweat sliding down his ribs and vanishing into fabric. He took one step forward, and the room felt closer, like the space had been reduced by inches while he wasn't watching. He blinked hard. The ceiling looked lower. The walls looked nearer. Not moving. Deciding. Jonah pressed both hands to the door, forehead against the peeling paint, and shoved with everything he had. The hinges didn't even complain. Then from somewhere near his left ear, he heard a small sound, soft and pleased. A child's giggle. Not from the rocking horse, not from behind the walls. Right beside him. Jonah whirled. Nothing stood there. The air was empty. The drawings stared back with their black mouths. But on the wall directly in front of him, one stick figure had changed. It was new. The wax was shinier, fresher. The figure hung from a rope like the others, but the face had details the others didn't. Hair scribbled into the shape of Jonah's curls. 2 dark dots placed where his eyes were. And this was the worst part. The mouth was open, as if the figure were screaming. Jonah's throat closed. "No," he whispered. He backed up until his calves hit the bed. The bed was small, a child's bed, but its mattress sagged as if something heavy had slept in it for years. The sheets were clean in a way that made Jonah's skin crawl, because nothing else in the room was clean. The rocking horse creaked again. Back. Forth. Back. Forth. Jonah tried to breathe slowly, tried to remember that this was a building, wood and plaster, dead things. Buildings didn't hunt. Buildings didn't want. Buildings didn't. The wall behind the rocking horse bulged. Just slightly, like something pushing from the other side. Jonah froze, the cold shock of it draining all his heat. He stared at the bulge until it smoothed out again. The wall returned to normal, as if it had never happened. Then the bulge appeared again, closer to him this time. A pulse. A slow inhale. A slow exhale. Like lungs. The house was breathing. Jonah backed up again. His knee struck the bed frame. The creak that escaped the wood sounded too much like a throat clearing. He ran to the window and tore at the boards. His fingers caught splinters, ripping skin, but he didn't care. He found a gap and looked out. And saw the hallway. Not the outside. The window looked into the house. A long corridor, dim and stretching, lined with doors that were all slightly open, each crack revealing darkness like an eyelid half lowered. Jonah stumbled back, shaking. The room tilted. For a moment, he wasn't sure where down was. He blinked and the drawings had shifted again. Not noticeably, not dramatically, but the faces seemed closer, their mouths darker, their ropes thicker. The rope on Jonah's stick figure looked like it had tightened. He pressed his hands to his ears. Stop, stop, stop. The child's giggle returned, and this time it came from everywhere, under the bed, behind the walls, above the ceiling, inside his own skull. Jonah sank to his knees. The air pressed harder. He felt it pushing his shoulders down. The ceiling lowered another inch. His phone light flickered. He thought, irrationally, if it goes out, I'm gone. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the room let go. The pressure eased. The ceiling stopped lowering. The giggling stopped like someone cutting a string. Jonah sucked in a desperate breath and looked up. The door was open. Not wide, just enough. A thin gap of hallway darkness. Jonah scrambled to his feet and lunged for it, nearly tripping over his own legs. He grabbed the door and yanked it open, expecting resistance, expecting it to slam shut again, expecting the handle to sear his palm. It opened smoothly. as if the room had never trapped him at all, as if it had only wanted to remind him it could. Jonah stumbled into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him, and he heard the lock turn. Lena ran until her lungs burned, until her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The upstairs hallway had split on her. 1 second Jonah was behind her, shouting her name, and the next there was a wall where he should have been, smooth and old like it had always been there. She spun around, phone dead in her hand, and felt panic flare bright enough to blind her. "Jonah," she screamed. Her voice died quickly, absorbed by wallpaper and darkness. She stood alone. The hallway stretched in both directions now, longer than before. Doors lined the walls, and some were open just enough to show slices of rooms, beds, dressers, chairs, glimpses that felt staged, like the house had arranged itself for her benefit. The laugh came again. Her laugh. Soft, breathy, familiar. Lena's scalp tightened. She squeezed her dead phone. "I didn't do that." The laugh repeated, closer, and it carried something subtle and vicious in it. A mockery, not just imitation. Like the house was wearing her voice the way someone might wear a stolen jacket. Lena forced herself to move. She picked a direction, any direction, and walked fast. Her shoes tapped on the wood floor, and she realized the sound didn't match her pace. Her footsteps were delayed, like an echo that didn't belong to her. She reached a door at the end of the hall and shoved it open. Stairs. She didn't remember there being another staircase, but she didn't stop to question it. She ran down. Each step groaned beneath her like an animal in pain. The air grew warmer as she descended, thick with the smell of wet rot. At the bottom, she burst into the kitchen and stopped so hard her knees almost buckled. The kitchen looked lived in, not abandoned. A pot sat on the stove as if someone had recently cooked. A dish towel hung neatly from the oven handle. A chair was pulled out slightly from the table, angled like someone had stood up from it in a hurry. Then the faucet turned on. Lena flinched. The water that poured out wasn't clear. It was dark, thick, and it hit the sink with a heavy sound like pouring oil. The smell that rose from it made her eyes sting. Rust. And something sweet underneath, like spoiled fruit. "No," she whispered. The cabinets opened. Not all at once. One by one, deliberate. A soft creak as each door swung wide, revealing dark, empty shelves. Then they started slamming. Bang. 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 The sound shook the room. Plates rattled inside drawers that she hadn't noticed before. The floor vibrated under her feet. Lena backed toward the doorway she'd come through. The doorway was gone. It was a wall now. Smooth, peeling wallpaper where the door had been. Her throat tightened into a sob. She turned and sprinted to another exit. There was one, a narrow door leading to what should have been the pantry, and ripped it open. A stairwell. Going down. Cold air rose from it like breath from a grave. Lena slammed it shut and staggered back. The faucet kept running. The dark water climbed over the edge of the sink. It spilled onto the floor in slow, heavy ribbons. Lena stared at it, frozen, watching it creep across the tiles like a living thing. The water touched her shoe. Her foot went numb instantly, like the cold had teeth. She jumped back. "Stop it, stop." The cabinet stopped slamming. Silence rushed in. Then, very softly, from somewhere inside the walls, she heard a voice whisper her name. "Lena." It sounded like Jonah. She spun. No one was there. Her eyes flicked to the water again. It was rising. Not spreading, rising. It climbed her ankles like it had weight and intention. It wasn't water anymore. It moved too slowly and too deliberately, thick as syrup. Lena gasped and scrambled onto the kitchen counter, her palms slipping on a surface that felt damp, though it looked dry. "Marcus," she screamed. Nothing answered. The water reached her knees even though she wasn't in it anymore. It climbed the cabinets. It lapped at the table legs. It swallowed the chair. And then beneath the surface, shapes formed. At first, she thought it was shadows, distorted by the rippling dark. But then fingers broke through. Gray, swollen fingers, nails black and split. Hands pushing upward like weeds. They flexed and curled, testing the air. One hand slapped against the counter edge. Lena screamed so hard, she felt something tear in her throat. The hand gripped. Another hand. Then another. They pulled. The counter shook, and Lena's body slid forward, her nails scraping desperately across laminate. No, 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 no. They grabbed her ankle. The touch burned cold, like dry ice pressed to skin. She kicked, but the grip tightened. Her foot went numb, her leg followed. The numbness crawled upward like poison. She felt her body, dragged forward inch by inch. The dark surface rippled, and beneath it she saw faces. Not clearly, just pale ovals turning up toward her, mouths opening without sound. Lena sobbed, "Please, please." Her leg slipped off the counter. The water swallowed it. The cold flooded her bones, and her muscles seized, locking her in place. The hands pulled harder. Her hips slid, her stomach hit the counter edge, her breath whooshed out. She reached for anything, anything. Her fingers found a drawer handle and yanked it open, trying to use it as leverage. The drawer came out completely. Inside were kitchen knives, arranged neatly. Lena grabbed one without thinking and stabbed downward. The blade sank into the dark water like it was flesh. Something beneath the surface jerked. A sound came from the walls, deep, pleased. The hands paused. Lena pulled, panting, tears hot on her face, and for a second she thought she'd heard it, that she could fight it. Then the water surged. The hands yanked all at once, and Lena was ripped off the counter. She fell into the dark, like falling into a mouth. The cold slammed into her chest, stealing her breath. The thick liquid forced its way into her nose, her throat, her lungs. She convulsed, flailing blindly, grabbing at nothing. Hands wrapped around her wrists, around her hair, around her jaw. They held her down. Her vision blurred. The kitchen lights, when had the lights turned on, flickered above, distorted by the rippling surface. She tried to scream, and only swallowed more. In her last panic second, she realized the water didn't sound like water anymore. It sounded like breathing. And then, abruptly, the water vanished. The kitchen was dry. The sink was off. The cabinets were closed. Lena lay on the floor on her side, hair spread across the tiles, mouth slightly open, eyes wide and glassy, as if still waiting for the next breath that would never come. Somewhere inside the walls, the house exhaled. Marcus told himself he was still in control. That was the only reason he hadn't panicked yet. He stood in the living room where they had first entered, phone up, camera rolling, whispering commentary into the lens like that could anchor him. "Okay," he said softly. "I don't know where Jonah and Lena went. This is weird because I didn't see them leave the hallway, but I'm recording, so if this is staged, if someone set this up, it'll show." His voice shook anyway. He swung the camera around. The furniture was still covered in sheets. The fireplace still sat cold. The tallies still scratched the wall. But something had changed. There were more tallies. Marcus stared at them, mouth drying. He hadn't looked away long. There couldn't be more. Yet there they were, 3 new marks, darker than the others, as if carved fresh. Marcus backed up slowly. His foot struck something. He looked down. A mirror shard. He didn't remember any mirrors in this room. He lifted his phone light higher and saw them. Mirrors. Dozens of them. Every wall now held a mirror, framed in warped, dark wood. Some were tall, some were small, some were cracked. All of them reflected him. He turned in place. His reflections turned with him. Except in one mirror. In that mirror, Marcus wasn't afraid. He was smiling. Marcus froze. The reflection's smile widened. stretching too far, pulling at skin like rubber. Marcus whispered, "No." The reflection lifted its hand. Marcus didn't. The reflection pressed its palm to the glass from the inside, and the mirror bulged slightly outward, as if the surface were thin ice. Marcus stumbled back. "Okay, nope," he said, voice rising. He turned and ran for the front door. The front door wasn't there. Only wall. Only mirrors. He spun, breath ragged, phone shaking, camera catching fragments of his own terrified face reflected back in endless repetition. The reflection in the wrong mirror stepped forward. The glass cracked. A single sharp line raced across it, then another, then dozens spiderwebbing outward. Marcus screamed. The mirror exploded. Shards flew across the room like teeth. Something crawled through. It looked like Marcus. It wore his face with perfect detail. Same freckles, same eyebrows, same mouth. But the smile was wrong. Too wide. And its eyes didn't blink. It unfolded from the mirror in jerky, unnatural movements, joints bending with slight delays, like a puppet learning how to be human. Marcus stumbled backward, tripping over the sheet-covered furniture. "Stop," he yelled. "Stop, this isn't funny." The thing cocked its head, listening, then spoke. It used Marcus's voice. Soft and calm. 20 minutes. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How do you know?" The thing smiled wider. "You came for a challenge." Marcus grabbed a broken chair leg from beneath a sheet and swung it, wild and desperate. The wood struck the thing's shoulder with a dull thud. It didn't react. It stepped closer. Marcus swung again, harder, cracking the chair leg against its skull. The thing's head snapped sideways, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw something beneath the skin, something dark and wet shifting like worms. Then the head slowly straightened. The smile did not change. Marcus backed away, sobbing now, throat burning. He lifted his phone like a weapon even though it wasn't one. The thing reached out. Its fingers were too long. Its nails too clean. It touched Marcus's cheek gently, almost tender. Marcus felt his skin go numb where it touched, the cold spreading fast. He tried to jerk away, but his body didn't respond properly. His arms felt heavy. His legs lagged. The thing leaned closer, and Marcus smelled burnt hair. And rust. And something sweet, like spoiled fruit. "Don't," Marcus whispered. The thing opened its mouth. Inside were mirror shards instead of teeth, thin, jagged pieces reflecting Marcus's own eyes back at him. Marcus's scream became a gargle as the cold poured into his throat like liquid glass. His phone slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. The camera kept recording. It captured Marcus falling. It captured the thing kneeling over him like a shadow wearing skin. It captured the moment Marcus's face went slack and empty, like a mask set down after use. Then the thing stood, turned toward the camera, and smiled directly into the lens. The screen went black. The house settled. The mirrors faded back into walls. The sheets remained. The tallies remained, now 3 marks deeper. In the kitchen, Lena lay still. Upstairs, in the child's room, Jonah stood in the hallway outside the locked door, breathing hard, shaking, listening to silence that felt too full. He didn't know yet that Lena was gone. He didn't know yet what Marcus had become. He only knew the house had let him out. And that meant it wanted something else from him. Something worse. Jonah never found the door again. By morning, the house on Graven Row stood quiet and ordinary, its windows boarded, its porch empty. Inside, 3 new tally marks cut deep into the wall, and somewhere in the dark, the house breathed, patient, full, and waiting for the next challenge.